Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs. I'm your host, Raquel Okyay, and today's guest is Michael Gilligan. Michael Gilligan and I just met. We just met on Facebook, and he was recommended to me to discuss this very important topic that I want to bring out to the public. And that is that the Second Amendment has a lot of, I talk about on this show, Michael, a lot of the incremental laws, and that's to eventually confiscate guns. And I think that politicians try very hard to make those incremental laws to incrementally take people's guns away, their rights away. And it's no different in family court. And that's why I asked you to come on the show, because I want you to tell me about what is going on in family court in America regarding Second Amendment rights. Are they being protected?
No, they're not being protected. Now I'm coming from experience as in law enforcement. I'm a retired police officer in the New York City Police Department. I'm also a dad who's been in the family court system and has had to defend my rights at some point in the beginning with attorneys, and then recently pro per as my own person before the court. There's such a wide range of things that could happen. Being a police officer and having a firearm, I was I'm held to the higher standard. And I've been the victim of false allegations, and the gun always comes up. And the NYPD, first thing they do is take your guns.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So this is as you were employed as a police officer?
Yeah. They'll take your guns. If an incident occurs, and I had one happen just before I retired, and which really forced me to retire. I felt it was necessary for me to get off the police department because I had a high conflict ex-spouse that was willing to lie and create a problem for me. And in New York State, very liberal state, and the false allegation industry in court is huge. And I'm saying like it's an industry, but it's huge. I've been around the courthouses. I see what the ex partes that come before the court, and if a parent or whoever's getting an order of protection has a firearm, more than likely those firearms are going to be confiscated. And I believe that the court system is used to take guns from people, especially in the domestic violence arena. There's no doubt in my mind. And,
okay, so you're talking about one person goes in to the court, files an order of protection, gets an ex parte conversation with the judge, which means one-on-one with the judge.
Right. So
where's your notice and hearing? Where's your due process, Michael?
My due process comes after I get notified after the ex parte hearing. And in my case, in 2016, it happened to me. I had already been retired, and I was smart, I believe. I understand how New York State works, and I didn't retire with my weapons. It's a liability. On purpose.
Because you felt that they were going to be confiscated anyway, based on the false allegations?
Well, I had an allegation while I was active on the job, and when I retired, I didn't have my jobs because they administratively took them from me because of an incident that occurred with my children, and a vacation. Actually, it was a bad misunderstanding. Somebody called 911 and jammed me up, and the job, the NYPD, to protect themselves, took my weapons, and as they did it, they apologized to me because it was such nonsense what was going on.
So these are the weapons all of them that you have. So that would be your personal.
I'm not, I like shooting weapons, but mostly it was my service weapons. I had 3 service weapons, a 9mm, an old, model 64-38, and an off-duty 38. That was it. That's all I had. And so they took the weapons, and a job opportunity came up when, while I was, I was eligible to retire, and I took the job, and I retired without the weapons, which was a good thing because an order of protection came up my ex-wife filed an order of protection because she wanted to prevent me from seeing my kids. And she indicated that I had firearms. And, the court was kind of surprised when they found that I didn't, and because they assumed I did. And
so you kind of, you sort of played it back right into their face. But I want to ask you a question. I don't understand the point about all of a sudden, just because you have firearms, right? So you're a legally firearm owner, and now you get accused of something. Like, where's the probable cause, Michael, to say that a crime was committed with that firearm? Doesn't there have to be a nexus between the firearm and a crime?
Correct. There is. There has to be. I've learned this now because I've had to do my own research. What I found out about law post NYPD has been more crucial to me than while I was on the job. I know more about it now than ever. You have to have an injury in fact. There has to be some kind of damage, and there has to be some kind of remedy and redress to the victim. In this case, I'm put on the spot to have to prove that my actions were non-threatening or there was no injury, and that's the way I approached it. And the bottom line is that they want to contract with you. The whole idea of going into family court after the ex parte, I'm coming in for an arraignment. Now, in my case, I had a judge immediately enter a plea for me without even asking me. And then I said to him,
"What did they plea?"
He said, "Well, we're going to enter a plea for you, Mr. Gilligan, of not guilty, and we're going to schedule a conference." And the whole idea with the family court is to contract you into services. I believe that they're there to create business for themselves and other attorneys.
I think so. Yeah, they reel you in. Mm-hmm. Let's have a mediation. Let's talk about it. Let's turn this into a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year affair. Your kids are adults. I know parents fighting in family court. Their kids are adults.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, in my case, I left a note on the door that told my kids I loved them. And somehow my high conflict ex, was able to convince a judge that this was threatening. And you know what? When I did this, nobody was home. I encountered nobody. And they still accepted this order of protection. I wound up, I hooked up with a lot of good people on through the movement of parental rights and stuff like that. And I was able to file paperwork to put the court on the spot, and I had a judge recuse himself.
That's great.
The judge that gave the ex parte had to recuse himself because I challenged his oath of authority to do what he did.
Nice.
And I did what was called a writ of quo warranto, which challenges his authority. And where does he get his authority to make the decision that he made when there was no injury, when there was no damage? They're basically just creating a factory of people coming in and trying to contract other social workers, psychiatrists into services, guardians ad litem, which is now called in New York attorneys for the child. Yeah. I was forced to stay away from my kids for almost another year. I had to do it myself, and they were very upset about that because they're always telling you that I'm the fool that wants to represent myself, but yet I'm the one who knows my case best.
Yes, you do.
And
that's absolutely true. And you know what? If you can't find a lawyer that's going to defend your rights, what are you supposed to do?
Well, you see, the whole problem is that there's an element of jurisdiction, and I challenge this element. Jurisdiction can be challenged at any time during the process, even after a verdict has been given or a conviction. And the bottom line is that the burden is on the petitioner specifically to establish their prima facie case that they had an injury in fact to bring a matter forward. Just because a statute says that a marital dispute could be heard in family court, it still needs to be supported by facts. Facts being that there was an injury, that I did something, and they were present. I encountered nobody, and
and you didn't have a firearm, and you didn't. Where's the threat? Leaving a note for your kid on the door.
That's it. That's all I did. So I left a note. It was two separate weekends. I left two different notes, And my ex was, is a keep away mom. She, is using the kids, and she's really hurting them, not me, keeping them away and not allowing them to explore their natural love for the other parent, which is me, and they've been walled off to that. And the courts don't want to do anything about it because it's a money-making industry, and as long and they're taking my money through what they call an income withholding order, which is
I think that they take advantage of unsuspecting parents who might be in a dispute. Now, they actually, instead of trying to litigate or come to an agreement, a fair agreement, it's actually they're pouring oil on the fire.
Yeah.
And they want you to be in as much conflict as possible. Can I share something with you, Michael,
Sure.
and the public? I was my first marriage, I was a young mother. I was a young mother and bride. And I got divorced, separated from my first husband very young. I was only 25 years old.
Okay.
And I have two beautiful sons. They're adults now, with my first husband. So him and I, we didn't get along. There were problems. There was a reason for the separation and so on. But we both agreed that the boys, really needed mom and dad. There was never any, I didn't really have to like him, or I didn't have to live with him or stay married to him. That was my choice. But I wasn't going to take that away from dad.
Right.
And then in my mind back then, I really needed dad, because I was working full time. I wanted to have some life, I needed dad. I needed him to take the boys to their games. I needed him to, there were all these things that were going on with raising my two sons. And I didn't like calling myself a single mother, because I wasn't a single mother. I was a divorced mother, because my boys had a dad.
Yeah.
Was he perfect? No, but you know what? I'm not either. Right? We both did. We both did our best. In fact, my youngest son with my first husband, he's 25. He lives with dad.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm happy that he is, because dad takes care of his sons.
Right.
That's the way it is. So anyway, when we got a divorce, Michael, we never went to court. We literally hired one lawyer that I knew. I had been working for lawyers at the time, so. Right. I knew a divorce lawyer, and I told him, what was going on. I really he wanted to get married. He wanted to get remarried at the time. So I said, I need to and we already had our own agreement going on. He was helping me out every month with money, and he was also taking the kids every weekend, one night a week or something. We had something worked out. Right. Because we're responsible adults who care about our children. That's why we did it that way.
Yeah, I have a valid stipulation agreement too, and it hasn't been honored since the day we signed it. And I filed contempt charges with an attorney against my ex.
Right.
And which during the trial, I had to fire my attorney because it took 2 years to go to trial. And I had one good day. Yeah, I had one good day in court, and the judge, who was, I don't have a problem saying her name. Her name was Carol McKenzie, and she's actually number 7 on the list in New York as one of the worst Supreme Court judges. And she told me right to my face, well, what do you expect me to do, Mr. Gilligan? And I just said, do what you would do if I wasn't paying child support. If I didn't pay child support, you'd be threatening me with jail.
Right.
But there's no sanction for the other side. They're not going to do that. You know what I mean? And it's all lopsided. And the bottom line is the state's getting away with it, and especially when they're taking weapons away from, lawful gun owners, they're using state statutes that really conflict with the constitutionality of the federal Constitution. Yeah. My friend Rick W. on YouTube just gave an outstanding YouTube presentation on this, and people need to understand that we have to know our rights. And most of us don't. We have to go in and I found out I have to go into the court, what they call impropriate persona, as my own person. I don't want to go pro se, because pro se means that I'm representing myself as an attorney, and I'm no attorney. There's a lot of tricks and a lot of research has to be done, and people have to take the time to, and I encourage them in those matters and before family court. You have to represent yourself because, and the element that has to be challenged always, every time, is jurisdiction, and lawyers will never do it because they need you to enter the jurisdiction.
Yeah, they want you to stay in that system where they're working in, and their friends and the judges, and
they want you to play in the playground with the judge. And by challenging jurisdiction, you're saying, no, I don't want to play. I don't want nothing to do with you. I don't want the benefit of your court. I said this to a judge that I had recused a few times, and he got irate with me, and I really don't care, And it was a battle. It's a fight. And the only ones that are getting hurt are my two boys. I have a 16-year-old. My only communication is through Snapchat. And my 13-year-old, he's going to be 13 in September. He won't speak to me at all. He won't speak to me.
Is there a parental alienation issue there?
Oh, yes. It's parental alienation has been going on. I had my kids every weekend up until my divorce was final. The minute my divorce was final, my ex ratcheted up her keep-away skills and just totally blocked me from them, and never obeyed the stipulation agreement. And it's a contract. It's supposed to be reciprocal. And I'm ready right now because I have a case in family court right now that I've been really causing them a lot of problems. I have an objection. They dismissed it. I'm fighting the money. And basically, I told the court, I don't want an income withholding order anymore. I'm retired from the NYPD. I get steady income. I'm going to take care of my child support by myself, which I'm entitled to. It's a liberty that I'm entitled to. And I've been challenging them properly. I've been waiting for a response to an objection now for a month, and they haven't responded to me because I basically told them they're trespassing my rights. And everything I said was constitutional stuff. And
there is a federal law that says there must be a visitation agreement within your stipulation in order for the states to collect money. And then also they're supposed to, by federal law, and they could do it more, they're supposed to check the financial records every 3 years to adjust, to see whether the support can be adjusted. Of course, they don't do that. The states aren't abiding by their own laws, let alone the federal laws.
Yeah. But what people don't realize is that child support is not state or local. It's all federal. Yeah. The agencies that are collecting money for child support within the state are all contractors for the federal government. They have nothing to do with the state. And
they're worse because the federal government is in D.C. You have no voice. You can't go talk to them. You can't go talk to your representatives. I just don't think the federal government was meant to be inside our lives in the way that they are.
No, absolutely not. I always encourage people to keep their matters private. Use a mediator whenever you can. Stay out of the system because all they want you to do is contract with them. That's all they want you to do.
Right, and if they can use, firearms to do that, they will. Because I know in a couple of different cases with the Child Protective Services,
right.
If they're taking kids, without a warrant, without exigent circumstances, oftentimes sort of like barging into people's houses, snatching their kids. Oh, your house is a mess. Oh, you're, because they want to get you in that game. Oh, sign the case plan. Sign right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the government. Watch.
Right. Yeah.
Sign right here, and I'm going to give you your kids back. Nay, because I got your kids now. Now, when you go sign, because you're like, oh my God, give me my kids back.
Yeah. You signed the contract.
You waive.
Yeah.
You waive your right to trial.
That's right.
You don't have to prove that case anymore because now you've said, I admit that I've done something wrong. This is all trickery. Right now, if you happen to have a firearm for self-defense in your home, they're going to take it. They take it out of your house. They will confiscate it. They will hold on to it. You have to pay a lawyer to go fight, to go back to court, to go get your firearm back after the family court case CPS investigation is over. Where's the due process?
There's no due process. When they came out with the Violence Against Women's Act, when I was a police officer, they developed these reports called domestic incident reports. I probably did at least 1,000 of them. And basically, you're required, a police officer, when they get assigned a job that's designated a family dispute, regardless of whether you encounter one or not, you have to fill this report out. And I guess that was for statistic purposes. But there's captions on there specifically: firearm in the household, any permits, firearm permits. All those questions had to be asked, and all those boxes had to be checked.
That's really intrusive.
It's intrusive, and it'll be used against them later on if an incident does really happen. Because a lot of times you'll go, an incident will be unfounded or unsubstantiated, or but sometimes no. And I'm not saying that there is domestic violence. Believe me, I've encountered very violent scenes, and where injury and damage was done, and you could articulate that to a DA in court and have it go forward properly. But there were a lot of instances where, and cops could be very sloppy. My bosses used to get angry at me because my narratives were a little bit too long, and because I put down there, if I felt like one party was lying or not doing the right thing, I made sure that was in there. That was my observation, and a lot of cops are lazy. They won't put that in there. And then if you go to get called into court later, now you're relying on your recollection. When if I go to court later, I could just say, hey, listen, well, I wrote it down here. My recollection is best on that day based on my report. Right. But that's the way it is. False allegations is out of control in everywhere. Look what they're doing to the president. It's a direct reflection of what they're doing to us in family court. It's all lie, cheat, and sneak, and
half-truths,
innuendo,
false allegations. It's just it's a nightmare. We're in a position where, like you said earlier in the program, that we are guilty and we have to prove ourselves innocent.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, I was fortunate. I got to question my ex-wife in my temporary order of protection trial hearing, and I got her to say, well, at what time were you ever afraid of me? She goes, I'm not afraid. And I turned and looked at the judge. And now this is a different judge. It's not the same judge who gave me the order of protection. But it was a joke. It was a dog and pony show. And it's all it ever is. It's a dog and pony show.
So I want to ask you, where are you at now? Where are you at now with the kids? Are you, okay, so you only get Snapchat. You get no visitation at all.
Well, no, I see my 16-year-old. I make times. We get together, and I've been taking him driving, but I haven't had steady visitation with him, and I'm trying to ease him in. He's a very non-confrontational young man, and I have to be cognizant of that. I just can't be like come in like gangbusters, and and I don't want him to I don't want to influence him either way. You know what I mean? He's at the age now. He's 16. It's it's time to become a man a little bit, and you have to make your own decisions.
Yeah.
He's not quite ready to. He understands what's going on, and he doesn't agree with it. But and his mother is just the whole order of protection thing was to keep him away from me, my oldest one, because he wanted to leave.
How many years has this been?
Well, I left my ex in 2007. On and off now for all that time. I mean, 2013 is when my ex she kept the kids away from me. And my little guy, who was my protector, I used to have to discipline him and tell him to stop yelling at his mother, to tell her that it was Dad's Day, Mom, I'm going. He used to argue with her, and I used to say, I used to tell him, gotta relax, I'll take care of it. Daddy will take care of it, and she used to get angry, and it was all about her, and she just despised the boys that they had feelings for me. And she had to stop it.
That's so sad. I mean, how does this benefit her? I don't understand women like that or dads like that, because it goes both ways.
When you have a system backing them up financially, because I'll tell you, I'm paying over $2,000 a month in child support.
That's a lot of money.
you know, and that's $25,000 a year, tax-free.
Yeah, she lives off of that. Maybe some welfare or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's that's just the nature of the game.
That's like an income. That's like working full time. You're paying her full time to take care of your. That is really bizarre.
Yeah.
Are you working on getting out of this?
Oh yes, I'm in court now. I guess you could call me a court fighter. I submit papers, and they know that I'm going to submit papers to fight them. And you know, I would encourage anybody in my position. You have to do your own research. You have to act as your own person before the court in these administrative matters, because family court is all administrative. It's phony baloney.
It's criminal. It's civil. It's in a civil court arena.
And you know, you don't need an attorney all the time. Everybody thinks that you need an attorney, and believe me, when you go into court, the judge is a member of the bar, and the attorneys before him are members of the bar. There's no independent hearing officer in that room. You have to, you know, they're all working together. When they go into chambers to talk about your case, they're not talking in your best interest or the children's best interest. And that's another phrase that drives me crazy. In the child's best interest, no such thing. The best interest is the best interest of the state treasury, because they're collecting 66% on the child support they collect from me and everybody else in the state. We're talking billions of dollars, and they're not willing to give that up.
They don't want to give it up, right? Because they need that high number.
So they'll violate your rights and use state statutes which are all outside the Constitution, and that's the problem. We have to bring them back. We have to bring the constitutionality of things back in, and that's where I'm having success, because they don't have answers for me when I start challenging them this way. They avoid. I've had objections, and I get these bizarre responses that never addresses what I'm asking. Never addresses what I'm asking. They're avoiding it all.
Yeah, you got them in a tizzy. They're like, oh no, now what do we do?
Oh, and then they'll use the court officers against you. They'll have them that, you know, they'll threaten you with contempt. And people have to say, you have to say, well, you know, sir, are you telling me that if I don't verbally defend, if I have to be quiet now, unless you're going to arrest me? So you're going to trespass upon my rights and my due process rights to actively defend myself verbally? And then they go back and they look at you like, because no lawyer is going to challenge a judge. Right. They're always telling you, shh, he's in a good mood today. Don't say anything.
Right.
You don't need that.
Yeah, but where are your rights? You're getting beat up. You're getting beat over the head with a sledgehammer. Yeah. I want to tell you, Michael, about what we are doing, what we're trying to do in Florida with a group called Why Dads Matter. Mm-hmm. The problem here, as well as you described, is that one of the parents, or the custodial parent, the parent who has custody, doesn't abide by the visitation order.
Right.
So the visitation order says dad gets child on Saturday at 1 o'clock, and mom doesn't show up with child on Saturday at 1 o'clock, right? So you think you can go back to the court, or you can call the police, it's violation, go pick her up, she's violation of a court order. None of that happens. You go back to court and you complain. So what we did here in Florida with Why Dads Matter was we proposed a legislation that says that we're gonna give them 3 strikes, you're out. How about that? So when mom or dad violates the visitation order, so mom doesn't show up for visitation, dad doesn't get to see child. That happens once, twice, the 3rd time, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem fair?
It does seem fair.
You know, we're making the case to our state legislatures, you know, who are kind of, you know, they give you the same old runaround as anybody else. Oh, well, I have to, you know, I'm brand new. I can't really make anything. You know, who's supporting your bill? You know, they want to, you know, we want to talk about the exact issue. Did we think that this law holding parents accountable who don't abide by the visitation orders, just like they hold parents accountable who don't pay child support, that's important, right, to them? Why can't we get these visitation, put some teeth on it? Put some teeth on these orders. Send them to jail. If they don't show up with child, send them to jail. I'm perfectly okay with that. What do you think?
I'm perfectly okay with it too, but the conflict is going to be they're going to look at it, the politicians are going to look at it, well, what's going to happen with all that funding? Do we still get the funding after that? The federal government still going to give us the 66%? And,
right.
The interesting thing is that, I talked to you about this domestic incident report. Here in Suffolk County, New York, it's the same report in New York State. I don't even get to write my own statement. And there's a 2-page report. The second page is for me to write my own personal statement. Suffolk County, they never let you do it. Complaining victim.
Why not?
Because they want to control the narrative. Right. They have to control the narrative. A guy like me who wrote many reports, I could articulate a crime on that. And then if they write something different and I articulate a crime and swear to it, I could take my copy and go to the DA and say, how come Suffolk County's not making an arrest for custodial interference? Or you know what I mean? There's a lot of things we could do. I'm thinking about doing like affidavits of truth now and just go to the DA directly, skip the cops and just go there and say, listen, this is what my ex is doing. I'm swearing to it.
Yeah.
And then, I want you to do an investigation. It's got to stop. But, there's a lot of resistance, and the cops here are robots. They're robots. And I get into more arguments with cops than because I know what I'm talking about. And they don't like that. They don't like that. I know what I'm talking. I told a rookie cop from Suffolk County, listen, you wrote your statement in my box. I said, and she wanted me to sign it. I said, I'm not signing it.
Right.
That's
tough. Do you think that that's widespread?
Oh, yes. It is. It's because money is involved. It's money is big time money is involved. When big time money is involved, this is a business. There's no justice here. This is a business. People are being used. We're a commodity. We're the commodity here. They don't care that I see that. They don't care that I don't see my children. They don't care that my sons are susceptible to drug use, committing crimes because their dad's not involved in their life. Right. Their mother certainly doesn't care about it.
The numbers are really, in fact, you know what? I have those numbers about what happens to kids in fatherless homes.
Oh, it's disgusting. My son is 16 years old. He wants, talking about the Second Amendment, he's interested in guns. His dad is not around to teach him. I enjoyed your last episode with the gentleman that talked about gun safety and teaching the kids properly, going to the classes. These are things that I could be doing with my sons to teach them responsibility. And that, and that the Second Amendment is huge, and it's a tremendous responsibility on us to secure it. And to, you know what I mean? And to do things lawfully. That's another word we have to start using. Instead of using legal, you got to use lawful. Lawful. Yeah, they don't like that either. I don't know why, but.
Right, I know. I do the same thing. I use lawful too now. But I do want to just give the viewers an idea of how bad the situation is. 34% of U.S. children live without their bio father. That's 24 million children in the U.S. 90% of homelessness and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger come from fatherless homes. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse come from fatherless homes. 70% of youths in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. This is why dads matter.
That's true. And you want to know what? You talked about gaslighting. A lot of, the thing I worry about is that, if I don't get to see my kids or be as active as I want, I'm still going to get blamed for it at the end. The other side is going to blame me for it because I wasn't. Now all of a sudden I'm not available. You never came to visit. You never did this. You never did that. And my question is, well, what did you do? This is a famous line from my ex-wife. I don't force my kids to see their father.
Oh, boy.
She said that to me with my stepkids, and I said, what does force have to do with it? You're basically telling me you don't want to encourage it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Nobody's forcing anyone. It's craziness.
Crazy.
You know, I'll tell you what, Michael. I mean, I was kind of like, I was on the calling my first husband all the time. Rob, what are you doing this weekend? You know, can you take the kids? Like, Rob, I'm going away. I'm going to Europe. Can you take the kids for a week? Sure, Raquel. Click.
Well,
Actually, now that my two sons are adults, my first husband, he doesn't talk to me at all.
Yeah. Well, you're talking normal here. You're talking normal. I used to say that all the time.
I like the guy. I want to be his friend. He doesn't, because now he's kind of like, he doesn't have to. What does he have to talk? He doesn't have to talk to me. I don't blame him. We're not, you know. Yeah. But when we were, because I probably bugged the crap out of him all the, you know, for so long. But now that we don't have any real, you know, the kids are adults, we don't have to really talk. I'm okay with that, you know.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with my sons.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I used to say that all the time. She's lost relationships with other guys because I know this for a fact, and they told me this because that they could never spend any time together because the kids were always with her. And they used to say, well, why don't you give them to Mike? And she would be insisting on no.
Why not?
Because mental illness is a problem, and that's the only explanation that I have. You know what I mean?
You know, think she's like narcissistic?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. Complete narcissism, and there's probably childhood trauma there that, you know, I'm not aware of that perpetuated all this, because it was the same for my stepkids, and you know, it was the same thing. It was the same thing.
I see. So she has children with a previous marriage.
Yeah.
And those children also don't get to see dad.
Well, they're all adults now, and they see their father. But then, you know, it was the same thing. You know, everything was about her, and you know, and given the appearance of tremendous, great motherhood, the genuine mom, and all this Facebook nonsense, and you know,
yeah.
and I'm not looking to take a mom away from my boys. You know what I mean? And
right,
but it's very difficult. It's a powerless thing. I can't protect my sons. Can't protect them, and and you know, Dr. Childress, who's a big on parental alienation. That's one of the first things he told me. He said in a video, I'm unable to protect my kids from this, and and that's why we have domestic violence. It creates domestic violence, Raquel. You know what I mean? When some men are going to react, I've been smart enough not to react, and believe me, I've had some emotional bouts. But the system feeds itself, you know. Yeah. When a dad is coming every weekend, he can't see his kids. After a while, some dads just lose it, and then they wind up going to jail.
Right.
And the system feeds itself because they're not willing to do anything to correct it.
It is a very painful experience to be separated from your child.
Oh,
for both the child and the parent, it's traumatizing, and that's why we see those numbers that I just said, right? It's a traumatizing experience. I just wish I could just impress upon people so much so. You know, I was very lucky. So you and I come from a different generation. Mm-hmm. Both my parents, were married, and they stayed married. And my dad was my hero. My dad was a writer like me. He was him and I enjoyed politics. We're both like, freedom fighters kind of thing. We have so many things in common. And I love both my parents dearly, but my dad is my hero. Yeah. And it created who I am. Mm-hmm. My parents created who I am today. And children learn by watch. You teach your children by example.
Yes.
Children by example. And that's what I tried to do as a parent. But at the same time, I also admitted to my weaknesses. Mm-hmm. Because I had weaknesses. Everybody does. When it came time for me, to have boyfriends, it was very simple for me to say, I'm not looking for a dad. My boys, they have a dad.
Right.
I don't need you to be a dad. I just want to be, friendly with you. But I don't need my kids involved.
Right.
And you want to go out this weekend? Let me call my ex-husband. Hey, Rob, what are you doing? It was great. I mean, I had a life, I feel like. He was very helpful. My first husband was very, very helpful. Very great. He's a great dad.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't talk to me.
But you should be commended for it. Yeah. You should be commended for it. I mean, it's very sad. My dad was not. I'm the father that wanted to be the dad better than my father, because he unfortunately passed away with words unspoken. You know what I mean? We had a lot of work.
Sorry to hear that.
You know what I mean? And and I put a lot of effort into my sons, and then it was yanked from me.
That's really tough.
And but the fight goes on. I'm not going to give up, and they know I love them, and even though my little guy doesn't talk to me, but he's got to toe the line with his mom, and he's not allowed to think for himself. He has no idea how he really feels. All he knows is that he's got to go along with mom because he's got to live there.
Yeah. And that's very tough on a 9-year-old. I'm sure he'll come around.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's been so awesome talking to you, Michael. And I think you're a great dad.
Thank you.
And you have a lot of fight in you. And I really see this moving in a positive direction.
Yeah, I'm thinking about starting a podcast and to try to help folks, and
I think you should, because
act as their own, defend themselves and teach them. They got to, because I think ignorance is the biggest killer here, because we don't know our rights and we don't know how to assert them, and when they're not teaching us this in school anymore.
That's
and
right.
We need to know what our Bill of Rights really is and how to assert them in court. To say, hey, listen, no, I don't consent to this. When I told the judge, I don't consent to the benefit of this court, he looked at me kind of like, and I don't wish to contract with you in anything. And they were taken back by that. And that's what has to be said. And you're winning when you piss them off. And I was pissing them off. And so, you're not winning, but you're getting the better of them. You're backing them into a corner. And,
right.
So that's what we have to do. We start doing that collectively, one at a time, and we start giving them. We start making them work.
Yeah.
We can make a difference.
I think so too, and that is very positive outlook on it. And thanks so much. I do really encourage you to create a podcast and get all that information out there, because people just. They're put in this desperate situation, like you said. Sooner or later, when you can't see your kids week after week after week after week, sooner or later you lose it. Both mom or dad. So in order to avoid all of this, if you handle yourself properly in the courts, but first, like you said, you have to understand what they're doing.
Right.
In order for you and you have to know what your rights are in order for you to defend your own rights, and you have to know what they are.
Right.
We don't get taught in school. We're not lawyers. We don't go to law school. How are we supposed to know?
Oh, and only a fool represents themselves.
Well, that's not true. Because
but that's what they keep telling you. They keep telling everybody. Only a fool goes in and represents themselves.
Well, you know what? Michael, I used to work for civil litigators in Manhattan. I did that for 10 years, a legal secretary and a paralegal. So I have a lot of experience with lawyers. And I think in the criminal realm, oftentimes, I think there's more justice there. And I think there is, some value to hiring an attorney who does know the system, who can fight you for your rights. Right. But at the same time, if you're in a case that's lasting 10 years and you're taking a step back and you're like, that one got paid, that one got paid, that one got paid, and you're like, I ain't paying them anymore, okay? And then you decide you're going to represent yourself because you know your case better than anybody. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's why you're doing a net worth statement. It's not to figure out what to divide. It's to figure out how much they can milk you.
Yes, and that's the first thing they want.
Technically, people should challenge that. You need a warrant for that. and you need a proper cause of action, I would tell the court, listen, I'll give you my pay stub, but you're not getting a net worth statement. Show a proper cause of action and have the clerk of the court issue me a warrant.
They probably their heads spin when you show up at court.
Well, I mean, they know what to expect. Hey, listen, when I went in for my order of protection, I got approached by, they gave me a letter out in the hallway, and when I came in, I felt like I was like, everybody was looking at me when I came in. They all knew what
Yeah.
And
who
I was,
you were. Yeah, on the
I
spot.
was a new judge, and I did okay, but I learned a lot. That's what it's. I want to be able to share my experience and the knowledge that I have, and encourage people. Hey, listen, if I could do it, you could do it.
Awesome. I definitely encourage you. So we are at the end of the show. Michael, this went so fast because it's been such an interesting conversation. I want you to go ahead and have the last word just about Second Amendment and family court in general.
Think smart, don't react. I would say that learn your rights. Learn your rights. Please go out and learn what your rights are, and study and do your research. You can do it. If anybody can do it, I mean, it's very simple, and love your kids. That's all. That's really all I could say is and then hopefully I can make a better world for my sons. If I can't do it in the moment and be with them, at least I could help them create something where I encourage people, and certainly when I get in contact with them, they're going to know their rights a lot better than I ever did. And they'll be more prepared to deal with the system than I ever was at a young age. So that's important to me too. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much, Michael. You've been great. You got to wave. It's my routine. If you watch to the end of my programs, yeah. Right, same time. Right?
What?
We have to do it at the same time.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks again so much, Michael. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.